Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back to the Not So Perfect podcast. I am Gerardo Cornejo.
I, as always, am Matt Chen with Downtown Fitness, and we'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsors of this podcast, Downtown Fitness and
the Cornejo Group, BXP Realty, and here at the McCarty Landing headquarters. So.
Yep, we're at 525 East McCarty. We got your back.
Yes,
In all
and
areas
everything.
of expertise. Yep.
Yeah, a little bit of everything under here, but most important, me and Matt are back. Thank you guys for watching. We have a couple eyeballs on YouTube again.
Yeah, I guess we're I don't know, maybe we're helping some people out.
And just thanks for listening to take the time. I mean, we're not experts at anything. Again, we have our specialties, but we really want to communicate with you guys. And the most important part of our podcast is me and Matt's conversation, communication. That is the focus.
Yep. And most of those come through lived experiences. So we're not, if I don't know something for certain, I'll look into ways that I can do better, or I'll find someone smarter than me in that topic and try and learn from them about whatever it is I'm thinking about.
And it's a daily thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's a daily thing. And have you recovered from Memorial Day? Why is it called Memorial Day weekend? Isn't it like Memorial Weekend, should it be now? Or?
Well, yeah, the Memorial Day is just the Monday, but it's the encompassing of the entire weekend, where we celebrate.
It drives me crazy. Memorial Day weekend. But, well, are you recovered? Did you do anything cool?
Let's see. I work Saturday, I work Sunday, and I work Monday. So
standard.
That's standard operating procedure for me.
Nice. I actually got to take 3 days off.
Very nice.
Which has been, it's a good break leading into like halftime of the year of business.
Yeah.
So that was what our meeting was about yesterday, like what to do now that we're at that almost mid-break, but cheat a little bit a month ahead because July is really, or the end of June is really halftime.
Right.
But if we could cheat a little bit and get a head start on the rest of the year, it's good for business, it's good mentally for us and just preparing.
Yeah. And sometimes, it's... and you're hearing from two different people how we spend our weekends. He got to take some time off, and I kind of lean into him, and I try and work through him. And it's whatever works best for you. If you don't need a break and you can just put the pedal down and keep moving forward, then that's what you need to do. If you need to take a little time to unplug and decompress, then that's what you need to do. We're not saying one way is better than the other. Regardless of what we talk about, we have different opinions on things, and we do different things with our free time. But again, he's a family guy. I'm a single guy. So, it's just different dynamics we're working through daily, So do what's best for you. Listen to yourself and follow the cues.
I dig it. And I had awesome conversations this weekend of being present with my friends, neighbors, family. I got to see a big part of my circle this weekend. And one topic that we really got deep into was suicide.
Always an interesting topic.
Always a topic, always there in the forefront. And we were kind of spitting out facts. I think it's like the second leading cause of death in men.
Yeah, in men, especially above like 40, over 40.
Over 40, which I don't know this as a fact. It's just, again, conversations.
Yeah.
But I repeatedly have heard that it is number two behind. Number one is heart disease, right? Heart disease. So a very scary topic. And again, me and Matt we're able to bounce this off of each other because we both lost dear friends, close friends to this. And suicide could be anything. It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, taking your life, the scary things.
Yeah.
Of how deep or how alone. I have no idea what it takes to get to that point.
Yeah.
Nor have I planned, nor am I planning that.
Yeah.
Not that it hasn't crossed our minds.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I would be a liar if I said it had never crossed my mind. Now I was never I never took it to that extent of making plans or anything like that. But for me, like in the lowest of my lows, with my alcoholism was at its peak. Whenever I was at my lowest, you're just trying to win throughout the day, and it seems like the harder you try, the more you lose. And then you multiply that by a week, you multiply that by a month, you multiply that by 6 months to a year, and just, death by 1,000 cuts where, that first day, that sounds ludicrous. And by day 365 or however long it is, that idea starts making sense, where maybe if I'm not here, maybe I'd be doing everybody else a favor just by not being such a constant failure all the time, So, yeah, I'd be guilty if I said that thought didn't cross my mind ever. I'm happy that I don't have those thoughts anymore. I got that when I got sober, got into recovery, went to rehab, got into my local AA group. And, that's just how I try and live my life now, is trying to help others. And when you put others ahead of yourself, it does two things. So a lot of people think, man, you do all these things for other people, Matt, what do you do for yourself? And my answer for that is, as much as I spend time with the race, or if I'm doing, a challenge to try and raise money 20 miles a day for a month, whatever that is, as much as I'm putting myself through for somebody else, that's helping me stay sober, stay on track, and stay focused on what my task is. And, before I got sober, it was one of those things where I didn't have any tasks. I was just bouncing around like a pinball machine, just never knowing where I was going to land from one day to the
Not
next.
that it's a wrong way to live. I mean, it's just you don't know yet at that point, I guess, or you haven't discovered what you're supposed to be doing yet at that point.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't make that step until I asked for help. I had been lone dogging this thing the whole time, trying to work my way through it, not trying to get too many people involved because, no one's really excited to announce that they're alcoholics or they got a problem,
But you're hanging out with friends all this time. Why couldn't one of them help you?
Well, I mean,
or friends, we'll call it, or whatever circle you're with.
So I'll say it like this: I'm not gonna call anybody out, but the people I was hanging out with, and it's something that you hear in the AA halls a lot is, once you get sober, you lose a lot of your drinking buddies, and whether those are friends, quote unquote, or real friends, or, however you want to define them, you find out really quick who your true friends are because the phone stops ringing for a lot of your so-called friends whenever you get sober. So, the ones that stuck around are the ones that I'd put through a bunch of stuff that I was very unreliable for, that I was super selfish about in their lives, and the fact that they were able to see me for what I was and who I was and still take me back, those are the ones you want to keep around, So when that phone stops ringing and your bar stool buddies up at the bar aren't calling anymore because you're sober, it tells you pretty quick what their true intention was, So that was, but yeah, going back to what I started with was I had to do this with help. This was not a lone wolf campaign, because every lone wolf campaign I had leading up to when I got sober was an absolute and utter failure.
Yeah, and I mean every death, every suicide is definitely a tragedy.
Yeah.
But the scary part is, like you said, those people that give and continue to give and continue to give and give and give, that's the ones that end up taking their life. And not just people we know, but it's like celebrities, like Robin Williams, Chris Farley. They just did whatever they could to make somebody laugh. Those are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah, no, it's, and again, we see them as these hilarious, funny guys and just, light up the room as soon as they walk in. And, but behind all that is pain, suffering, shame, guilt, who knows what they had that they were dealing with. But it does seem like when you add substance abuse to that already, tough situation, it just amplifies everything and just makes everything a lot harder.
Because then you're not even thinking, so you're not even present anymore.
No.
I guess that's the goal of, I don't need to be present.
Yeah, well, you're either trying to escape for, the quick 15, 20-minute fix you're getting, or if it's an all-day drinking thing, or, whatever it is.
Or weeks or months.
You're looking for that escape.
Just unconscious.
You're trying to numb what you're currently feeling.
Which brings me to my quote that I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
I'm a big Peter Crone fan, and came across an old podcast that I listen to a lot, but his quote says, "As long as you think heaven is a place you go to when you die, chances are you're living in hell." So nobody's ever been to heaven or reported back on it, I guess, as official, So as far back as I can remember, I've always just appreciated life and earth. I think, thanks to my parents for showing me the oceans first. Some of my earliest memories are being at the ocean with family, laying on a hammock with my mom, eating watermelon. Of course, this was in El Salvador. I don't remember anything else of the landscape. I know we had volcanoes and there was a downtown, but growing up in Southern California, we were at the beach weekly, the ocean, but then my friends took me snowboarding, and always had an appreciation of my surroundings is so much bigger than this. Like, why isn't, there's no way heaven could be better than this. And then the people that you're around, and even where I'm at now, like our conversation, this is part of my heaven. It's part of my, I look so much, like we're getting really good consistently on this because I need you weekly.
Yeah.
You know, this is great for us. And now that we get other people listening and just hearing us just talk, you know, we're not here saying who's right, who's wrong. We're just.
Well, if that's what we're going to do, I'm probably the wrong one. So we'll just get that out of the way.
Matt is not perfect, just so you know.
No, not at all.
And neither am I, but I love the perfect part of my life that I do get to wake up. I do get to see Stacy first thing. Then it's my house. Then wake up my kids, you know. Then it's where I live at, which I dreamed of living there. So yeah, well, what's wrong with making heaven here where you are at now?
Yeah.
And you're just like one conversation away from getting the help of somebody that's not in your circle, somebody that you don't talk to every day. Maybe the random person at the bar stool, you know, that one last conversation that you needed to hear. So thoughts on that quote?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's I like what he said there, and I like how you explained it there because, you know, just living the day and age that we live in today, a lot different than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago because of the invention of what we're videoing on is cell phones. Mm-hmm. You know, so I always resort back to that being present in all things you're doing, you know, so it doesn't matter if you're waking up, saying hi, good morning to your wife, giving her a kiss, and then you're going into your kids' room and waking them up and giving them a kiss and getting them up for the day. You know, if you're thinking about 30 other things while you're doing, you know, the important things, waking your wife up, saying hi, good morning, waking your kids up, giving them a kiss, getting them up and moving, you know, you're not truly embracing and appreciating the time you have with those loved ones that we talk about. You know, so again, it's one of those things where if you're living a chaotic life where you wake up too late and then you're trying to get the kids up and then they're not listening because they're fussy or they didn't get to bed in time, and you know, where you just constantly have a state of chaos where it's just like, you know, there's ways to go about that where you can, you know, decompress that situation a lot and just embrace the moment you got, whether it be 5 minutes with your kids before you got to go to work, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Maybe you're making breakfast every morning and that's just the thing that dad does on weekdays during the summer or whatever it is. You know, but it's one of those things that being present in all things you're doing, you know, if you're on the mountain snowboarding, but yet you're just having to check Instagram every 5 minutes, how much are you truly enjoying that moment you're in, you know? And the mountains is someplace I truly feel like that's a close place to heaven.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, you're on top of the mountain, about ready to go down a slope, and you know, it's just you and your snowboard, and it's just quiet. You know, it's just there, man. For be present, just see what you're surrounded by. These huge mountains that make us look infantile compared to, you know, what we're doing in that moment. But it's just that being present, you know, and that a lot of time that means putting that phone away or putting that do not disturb on at 6 o'clock when you get home from work, so you can be present with your kids until they go to bed at 8. And then if you need to go back to work, you can. But again, it's just taking those little moments and windows to be present in all of the things that you do. You know, any way of doing things. You know, I think I mentioned this on a podcast a while back, but they introduced Marshall Faulk as the new Colorado Buffaloes running back coach.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how you do one thing is how you do everything. You know, and I truly believe, and I catch myself not always being present in all the things that I'm doing, or being sidetracked by a thought I got in the back of my head that I can't get rid of. You know, but again, through practice and through just some different tools and just mechanisms, I find ways to reel myself back in that moment. Because I'll catch myself when I do it, because I'll be, you know, instead of being present with a client or with, you know, being on a run or something like that, if you're thinking about, you know, I wonder what my Instagram post is going to be after I post this, you know, talk I give on this run. You know, I can't focus on what I'm doing in the moment, you know. So.
And I think two things that have helped me stay grateful, thankful, happy is the books I've read and the people I've met. I mean, there's a quote of that. You are the books you read. 5 years from now, you'll be the same person, or whatever it says. The books you read and the people you meet. You're one book away from discovering something in your brain, or one person away from waking something up. And maybe, I mean, I think this is something we want to put out there. If you haven't heard this conversation, or if you're trying to have this conversation, again, reach out to us. You're just one person away from getting a direction. I mean, it's like a sailboat.
Yeah.
You know, the wind will take you there, Hopefully there is wind, but the good thing is you get to wake up and maybe there will be wind to guide you in the right direction.
Yeah.
That day, whatever you're going through. Matt, let me ask you this. A lot of people, now that we're in our 40s, this makes sense. Work and employment is such a thing in our lives that the pressure is there of paying bills, dealing with your boss dealing with their boss, and then corporate down and all that. Those very, I don't know what corporate culture, a lot of people think that that's all they are. You know, and you as a business owner, do you think you have less pressure than having a boss yell at you? Or do you love being your own boss?
Well, so I mean, I've worked in, different restaurants, different fitness facilities. I've done a variety of different things throughout my life, but each one of them provides a different challenge, because what I found is, like, if I'm working underneath somebody, under their business, whether it be in the restaurant or whatever, you have to kind of know how your boss thinks, what they expect, and you need to get to the point where you can do things without them having to tell you, where you just kind of know what they lean into when this situation comes up. That situation comes up, disgruntled customer, whatever the situation might be. So it's one of those things that they each provide a different challenge. Now, when I went out and started my own business, like, that was scary, because you're taking that leap into the darkness that you've never been before. So you don't have a roadmap, you don't have guidelines where, if you work under somebody, you're kind of under their umbrella, and they can kind of train you as they need to, or how they want you to do things, or how it works in this industry or that industry. So they each provide their own challenges, but I'll say this right now, like, of all the bosses I've had, none of them have been harder on me than myself. So that's, my expectations are pretty high of myself, especially, since I got sober, especially. But starting my own business has been one of those things that I embrace the responsibility, because there's no fingers to point when you start your own business and things don't go right, things don't go the way you want, business isn't as busy as you'd like it to be, how am I going to make ends meet? That's on me to figure out. And there's a variety of different ways you can do that, but again, what I do in situations like that, if I find myself in a, kind of backed into a corner, I'll find other small business owners and see what they do. Maybe they're doing something that I'm not, that's getting them more outreach than what I'm doing, or maybe I'm not utilizing my social media, in the right way to get my message out there, to advertise my deal, or whatever your special is for the month, or whatever the topic is. So for me, I still have that imposter syndrome kind of in the back of my head, where, I come here to work every day and I'm doing my stuff, and, there's times throughout the day where I just have to think, like, is this real? Like, am I really doing this? Because, back in my head, I still have flashbacks to the person I used to be, which was an unreliable, someone that drank too much, someone that had all sorts of legal issues and vehicle issues because of the choices I made. But again, it wasn't until I got sober where I was able to look at myself in the past of who I was and then who I am today, two entirely different people. So just by keeping that in mind, and, even just my self-talk, because that's what I would do all day long, is I would just berate myself over and over and over, and just a disc that would just spin and repeat the same thing. But I've been working on, projecting who I am versus who I was, and just that simple little metric of every time I start talking down on myself, Matt, that's who you were, that's not who you are. And just a week of that, really changed how I looked at myself moving forward, and saw huge progress, just in my mood, my stress levels, my depression, anxiety levels, like all that stuff is minimized whenever, we give ourselves the grace of not painting ourselves as the person that we used to be, because we've grown, we've gotten better, gotten smarter, we've fallen down.
And one day at a time, like you said, those 365 days of thinking negative, imagine 365 days of 1% more positive at a time.
Yeah.
The 1% rule.
Yeah. And again, it's something that I tried doing a lot, but again, it's one of those things, and this always resorts back to being true with my story, is anytime I'm trying to work on these things and doing it by myself, it doesn't work as well as it does until I get help from somebody else that knows more. So in my case, I started using It was right before I turned 40. It was like the week of my 40th birthday. And I was in a real low spot, just, I don't really know why. It was a mood I was in, and I just could not kick myself out of it. And so I got on to BetterHelp, which is an online therapy session. Shout out BetterHelp. And I did probably 4 weeks of sessions, once, twice a week for about 45 minutes, and just learning from a professional, that can kind of guide you in ways of better self-talk or more positive self-talk, or being able to decipher guilt from shame. We kind of just glob all that stuff as one. But when you break it down, guilt is one thing, stress is another thing, So just even identifying the differences between those two things just helped me kind of decipher what's real, what's not, what's something I'm making up or leaning into that's not necessarily real, but also are these coming up because of past actions I've done, before I got sober. And they still creep in every now and again, but I've gotten better at kind of swatting those flies out of my head and keeping everything focused on what's happening today, what's happening now.
And thank you for sharing all that, because Matt runs a fun business. Whether it's successful, I don't know, but to see him with his clients from morning till nighttime, they're always smiling. They show up. Like, to see them repeatedly coming in, that's a fun business. But you still have anxiety, you still have stress, you still worry, you care a lot about your business. So you don't have it all figured out.
Yeah.
But it looks like it.
Well, and that's kind of another aspect of it too, So, and I was talking about this with our buddy Bryson yesterday. I had a meeting with him, and we were talking about, in this line of business, like, because he's working on a new business. Shout out NeuroWave, Bryson Morrow. And he's doing some scans on me, and we're getting into, we did the scan last week. We sat down and talked about it yesterday over coffee, and kind of seeing where we want to proceed from here. But so the NeuroWave, it kind of does a brain scan of, because my thought this whole time was, I've known just from the podcasts I've listened to, some of the people I've looked up to, and kind of digging more into their life. I've had a lot of traumatic head trauma throughout my wrestling career, from third grade till high school, and then coaching for 10 years, and then MMA for 8 years. And the times I've just gotten drunk and fallen over, woken up with a bunch of stitches in the back of my head. But what I've read is that a lot of past people, like two of the people that stand out, stand-up comedians, Roseanne Barr and Sam Kinison. So Sam Kinison was like a 70s comedian. Roseanne Barr, we know who that is. But both of them were in a tragic car accident when they were really young, and they had really bad head trauma because of the accident. And these are two separate instances. They weren't together or anything like that when it happened, but both of them were hit by a car as pedestrians. And before the accident, they were very diligent and mannered and da-da-da-da-da. Well, after the incident, they were very erratic, very impulsive,
the personality we get to see.
Impulsive and addictive, and just,
okay.
You know what I mean? So just hearing more people open up and kind of talk about some of those people, and even like Joe Rogan and those people talk about just being in his line of work with the UFC commentator, just the head trauma. And he talks about a lot in like boxing, just because some of those old timers that you see talk now, and they've got the mush mouth and the slurred vocabulary. So it's hopefully what we did for the scan, and what he found was, and it kind of gave me a little breath of fresh air, because that's what my thought was, is that I've just had a lot of head trauma. So I think that contributes to my impulsive and just addictive personality, in terms of like having a hard time stopping things. So now we're going to start moving forward. But he's got some techniques and stuff that we're going to start working on hopefully next week to work on that. But he said, and I got to see the scan, and, as they go through these different levels of brain waves, you can see like mine was lighting up like a Christmas tree, where like a normal untraumatized brain is going to be more gray. Mine was red and blue and yellow, and I mean, it was every color of the spectrum except gray for the most part. So
you put a new color in your way.
Well, not intentionally, but yeah, I guess the brain decided. So, so we're going to start working on some therapy techniques that he's got, and I'm going to report back once we get into those, because I feel like it'll be a new tool in the toolbox that people can dive into. And Bryson's great to work with. Bryson, he's super easy to work with, and very explanative when he's talking about this stuff. And if he doesn't know, he's honest about it, because he collaborates with other doctors that are in this field. So like with me, he's got a whole recording of him and the other doctor like going through my scan, and so I think there's a lot of room to grow this business, and I really want to help promote him as well because I think it's going to be beneficial to a lot of people.
And to people on the outside looking in, you run a successful business. You don't have it all figured out.
No, I do not.
Again,
rarely do I have it figured out.
Myself, our team is growing. We're doing great. Everybody's working. It's a shit show. I mean, don't believe anybody that says they have it figured out. They run a perfect business. I don't care if they're making millions a year, millions a week.
Yeah.
It's a shit show. And as long as you show up to try and fix it, one of my biggest, the thing that's helped me get to this point is communication as far as growing a team.
Yeah.
It's communicating, checking in on people. Someone asked me a question of what's expected at the Cornejo group, and my immediate response was respect. Respect yourself first. Respect the fact that you are choosing to start your own business in real estate. And what's it take to start a business? You got to show up every day.
Yeah.
7 days a week.
Yeah.
We had a holiday weekend. Matt was here 3 days, the 3 days. But then respecting your community, your team, the building you're in. That's what really makes us a good team because it starts with respect, especially respecting yourself.
Yeah.
And then you have the team that backs you up on everything. But we don't have it figured out. We're trying to get better. Well, our goal is to help at least 100 families this year. We got very close to it the past few years, but it's just a goal.
Yeah.
And we might make it, we might not, as long as we tried.
Yeah. Well, and something we talked about in one of the early podcasts, part of the treatment court program, the motto, you get these wristbands, it's show up, try, and be honest, And so that applies to everything. It
is something you teach your kids.
That's
something you try to teach
yourself. That's how you apply your work, your home life, your, whatever it is that you're venturing in. If you can do those three things, which...
What was the first one?
Show up.
Show up.
Try. Be honest.
And be honest.
Yeah. So as rudimentary as that sounds, take a second when you're by yourself and just think how often, of the different places you're driving to every day, all the different places you go to pick up your kids or take the kids, how many times are you showing up, trying, and being honest? Mm-hmm. Either with yourself, with your kids, with your boss, with coworkers, like whoever it is. And, so it's one of those things, it's very simple, but it's very...
Is this getting in the way?
Yeah,
Is the brain
letting your brain get in the way,
Everything else getting in the way.
Well, I would have showed up, but the traffic was super, you need to leave earlier.
Part of, not to cut you off, but part of a conversation I had this week is a friend of mine is in a workout group, and other people are excelling and you hit that plateau, and it's like, well, I'm counting my calories, I'm lifting heavier, I'm showing up, I'm trying. And I think it's missing the be honest part. Like, you look fantastic. Whether if it's looks or feelings, you're going, be honest to yourself. Like, I feel great.
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s. I feel great. I look great. I mean,
I've dropped 12 pounds over the last month. Just look at the little victories you got throughout your process.
And just your kids seeing you try to be better in your 40s or making sure that is part of health.
Yeah.
Health is moving your body, lifting the weights, or just showing up daily.
So I've got
even if it's just a walk.
Yeah. So I've got a story similar to what you just said. So had two clients that were working out at the same time, and one person got, we'll say, 4 rounds through, the other one got 3. So I get a text later that evening from the lady that got 3 tallies, and she said, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to step my game up? Am I doing something wrong? Am I not getting enough pre-workout? Trying to dive into all this stuff. And I said, well, first off, you just need to you need to take a step back, decompress, look from a bird's eye view, but zoom out, And when you do that, all right, well, let's look at these two people, okay? The one is 30, no kids. The other one is 40, 2 kids. So you guys are already in 2 different arenas that aren't even in the same city. You know what I mean, in terms of where you guys are starting from? So I told her, I said, this is you versus you. This is not you against Billy or Susie or Jenny or whoever it is. This is your journey. And you're in a different spot than me. And I'm in a different spot than her. And she's in a different spot than Gerardo, We're all starting from a different spot. So if you're not keeping up with everybody else, make that your new bar. One of these days, I'm going to keep up, and I'm going to get that 4 tallies right alongside the other person. But again, that doesn't come overnight. That doesn't happen from.
I was gonna say, how long
that doesn't
is it gonna
happen from
take?
Monday to Wednesday when I see you every other day. You know what I mean? So again, it's your journey and it's your practice. So if the 2 times you're coming in here, you're not getting as much done as you would like or you think you should be getting, well, if I've only got you for 2 hours out of the week, that's a lot of time for you to go on an extra bike ride or go on a walk during lunch or, take the kids and grab their bikes and go to the Kiedis Trail and see, anything extra you can do, it's going to require extra work, So like I have some of those people that, they'll do the 2 workouts with me, say 2 hours a week, but every time they come in here, they'll take a picture of the board that I have for the workout and they'll do that another couple times on their own, which I encourage them to do. If you want to see results quicker, you can't rely on me for just 2 hours a week to magically help you lose 50 pounds. We will get there, but if you're working on a time crunch or you want to get it done faster, you need more output, so that's more calories being burned, more activity being done, spending that time at the before you go to bed and stretching so you're not waking up stiff and disencouraged to go for that bike ride or that walk or that jog in the morning before the sun comes up because you're sore from the night before or the day before. So again, everybody's starting at a different path, and don't assume to know where this person's starting from or that person's starting from. That's not your focus. Your focus is on you getting better. So if you're focused on Gerardo and Linda, but I'm ultimately here to get myself in shape so I can get off my diabetes medication and all my extra, blood pressure medicine and all this stuff, which lots of clients that have came in here with a laundry list of medications they're on, and now they're down to 1. And again, that's because you're healthy, you're losing the weight, you're not carrying the extra weight, you're not eating all the sugar, you're not, you're just more conscious about what you're.
And the easy part is getting your body to move, the hardest part is getting your brain to kind of connect with your heart, and that's what gets in the way.
Well, and I tell people this all the time, like when you start running, like for me, I'm a runner, so that's what I do. That's just, say I give myself an hour to go run. I did yesterday, I did a little 6-miler, and that whole time is like my opportunity where if I have grievances against myself, that's where I air those out. So if you see me running on the street and I'm head down staring at the concrete, that means I'm going to war with my brain, So I use that as some fuel, and that's really one of the only times I allow myself to let that negative enter my brain, but I know it's centered around, only time I do that's whenever I run. And that's when I kind of exercise the demons, so to speak. So for me, that's my opportunity to just, whatever is on my brain, if I've got a lot going on or if I have a little going on or I have that one thing where I messed up and I'm really, really dwelling on it, I'll use that hour or that however long I'm running to whatever, discuss that in my head, just to kick it around, see if there's a better way of doing it, how I should do it better next time. And guess what? When I'm done with that run, that all just dissipates. Like there is no more worry about whatever it was I've been kicking around all day or holding on to that I couldn't let go of.
And to add to that, it could be running, it could be working out, it could also be mowing your lawn, cutting your grass.
Yeah.
Take an extra 30 minutes and go over it all again because you're present there.
Yeah.
And then there's the result after. You get to see your lines. That's some of my most peaceful times is cutting my grass.
Same here.
Sometimes I might cut the back twice. Just to refresh and reset.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too, I've had a couple of. It seems like it's more of the ladies, but I'm sure it goes both ways. But my experiences have been with a couple of my female clients. They work full time, and then they're also in charge of taking care of the kids. That means getting them to dance and getting them to this and getting them to that and getting them to this and getting them to that. And, so they are wound tighter than a drum just from, well, I know when I get done at 5, I got to be here to pick up the kids, and I got to be here, and I got to drop them off by 5:30, and then I got to be at Matt's by 5:45. And again, it's one of those things like you get in those routines and those ruts, and you don't even realize that's how you're living your life, So some of these are some newer clients I've had. I've kind of just subtly brought that to their attention. Like, now I noticed that, you're pretty much always have a kid on your hip, or you're always dropping one off or picking one up or doing both at the same time. And then you come in here and you're like, your heart rate's already at 150 and we haven't even started the workout yet. So just encouraging them like, hey, So just from what I'm observing, what you've talked to me about, just your day-to-day and what your responsibilities are for, yourself, your kids, the husband, how many hours a week do you have that you are uninterrupted with kids, work, phone, computer, whatever it is? And she didn't have an answer because I'm pretty sure it was 0.
0.
And that's important, guys. And it doesn't matter if it's an hour that you just go for a walk around your neighborhood, or if it's an hour you come in here and work out twice a week. Like, those are non-negotiables, because everybody has to be able to unplug and decompress. And even if and the best way to do that is just getting a little exercise while you're doing it. Again, biking, walking, running, hot yoga, workout, anything you can think of that's going to be productive. Mowing the grass, maybe push mowing instead of riding the lawn, like doing the riding lawnmower. Whatever it is, just you have to have that time. You have to set boundaries that this is your time.
Yeah.
It's valuable, and it will not be interrupted.
And it's painful for moms too that are that busy. Nothing against single ladies or non-moms.
Yeah.
As much as they run our entire lives, they don't think it's enough. So this is a reminder that you are enough.
You make all the people.
Yeah, you are the superhumans. You're pretty much perfect.
Yeah.
By just creating a human being, that's something we cannot do. Of course, it has to be. I don't know. We won't go there. But you guys make the humans, and you are beyond enough.
Yeah.
Take the hour. I'm seeing moms go to yoga together. And these mom groups are getting bigger. Not to just get away from the kids, but be somebody. Yeah, go and be yourself for a couple hours. We see it with the homeschool moms, with the moms with 3 kids, the moms with 1 kid.
Yeah.
They don't have enough time. It feels like they got to do the laundry, the dishes. We try to help out. Communication is a huge thing in my marriage. Here's what I'm gonna do. Here's what you're gonna do, and we meet in the middle. If you need my help, tag me in.
Well, and again, if the moms are trying to do all the stuff, and this isn't calling anybody out, it's just a matter of, well, how much is the husband doing? Mm-hmm. Like, how active is he? Like, it doesn't, I've never heard you mention him once, and you getting kids to and from, or so-and-so got sick from school and you had to leave Columbia to come home. Like, how, maybe you need to put a little pen to paper and say, is this something that's is this gonna last? Mm-hmm. Because again, then you start developing resentments that you got to do everything and he doesn't do anything.
And then that's where the separation.
And then you start seeing the split. And I told this person the other week. I said, it's a really hard thing to do when you draw that first boundary, that first line in the sand, and say, look, this is how it's gonna be. I will not negotiate on these things. So if this is gonna work, we need to figure out how to make this work. But again, if you've never done that before, which a lot of people haven't, not to that extent, they're going to just keep going through the same cycle over.
So Matt, one of our bachelors here at McCarty Landing, giving relationship advice.
And this is the fly on the wall.
Yeah.
I get the luxury of hearing, because in this.
But that could save people's lives, marriages, decades of life.
And that's my point. Is look. I had to do it with myself, with my family, like my mom and dad, my brother. Like, whenever I got sober, like, my word didn't hold anything. It didn't carry any weight because I was lying about everything. Lie to cover up another lie, to cover up another lie, to cover up another lie. And again, you lose your credibility that way, and I did. When I got sober, I had to completely tear myself down to bare bones and basically rebuild myself, trying to figure out who I am. But it wasn't until I started doing those boundaries where, when I got out of rehab and got back to kind of the real world, back to the job market and got my house and bills and stuff like that are still coming in, my parents were trying to help. Were they helping too much? Well, we didn't know because none of us had been through this before, but I had to make a line in the sand and say, look, I know you guys are trying to help me. I know you're trying to do this, but I have to figure this out for myself.
Yeah.
Now, if I have problems, I'm not ashamed to come to you guys and say I got problems I need help with, but I need to figure these out for myself because you guys aren't going to be here forever. Your time will come where you're not going to be here for the advice and this and that, but so that's going to be, I need to be able to float on my own.
Yeah.
So,
it's amazing that single moms will endure this pain, suffering, fear forever.
Yeah.
They will live a lifetime forever. But here's men where the ego gets in the way, and it could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but they can't last that long.
Yeah.
You know, that they think the answer is suicide, and it's not even as much pressure. Not taking anything away from men's feelings or anything like that, but the ego that gets in the way. It's just amazing hearing what female moms have to endure when we're just in our heads as males.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't make enough money. The boss doesn't think I'm doing a good enough job. There goes my life. And then you leave behind an entire legacy, family, generations.
Yeah, and
the damage it does, you know, the
trickle down for it. But just to add on with something you said the ego, and ego is a strong word and a good word for it. But another word that has a dual connotation is pride. There's good pride. I'm proud of the work we did. I'm proud of the way the yard looks after you got done mowing it twice and you got the crisscross tic-tac-toe lines. And then there's the pride, I don't need help. I can figure this out or I'll do it. Well, to what extent? To the point that you kill yourself or you're, trying to stop drinking and you can't stop drinking and driving. And next thing you know, you're waking up hungover but in jail because you hit somebody and killed somebody. Now you got to live
taking more lives.
Now
than
you got to
yours.
live with that, or maybe in the process you kill yourself and somebody else, or maybe you just kill yourself. But
that brings me to my next quote.
Yeah.
Or we
I was just going to reemphasize. So that pride, it's a double-edged sword. Anything in moderation is good, but if you're leaning too heavy one way or the other, it's going to skew. So pride is something that you've got to keep in check. Being prideful is good, but it's also a sin.
And this quote is by the world famous Red Hot Chili Peppers.
All right.
Shout out to Anthony Kiedis. We hope to have you on the podcast someday.
And Flea.
Or soon. And Flea, for sure, Flea. We'll have a jam session. But Goodbye Angels, this is a song on their 2022 album. Sounds just classic Red Hot Chili Peppers. But towards the end of the song, one of the quotes is, "Suicide is never going to save you. Suicide is never going to save you." That in itself, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't. And, like I said, I've had the moments where I thought it'd be better if I just wasn't around just to make everybody else's life easier. And the ultimate answer is it's not going to help. It won't help your loved ones. It won't help your kids. It won't help your wife, your parents, your siblings. Like, that shock wave is felt in everybody that you care about and everybody that cares about you. That shockwave is something that doesn't go away. It's just always there. And I mean, even with Chris, like, I'll just have random thoughts about Chris, like out of the blue, like not thinking about suicide or anything else along that line, but I'll just have a moment where I'll think about, oh man, I remember when me and Chris were whatever. Or man, I remember whenever he helped me out at the bank, whenever I needed to get a home equity line of credit, and he did everything. He was awesome
for us.
He was great.
Everything for us.
And the whole time he's sitting there complimenting me, like, oh man, I wish I could. Man, one of these days I'll get as jacked as you, or one of these days I'll be running as much as you are, and this and that. And it's like, well, I just saw you running on Edgewood the other day, Chris. He's like, yeah, but I only had a 25-pound ruck on, and I was only doing like 4 miles. Like,
you're a ranger, man.
You're an Army Ranger, brother. Like, that's first off, like,
we'll never get to that level.
You right now if that's what needs to happen. Like, because Chris was someone I looked up to. I'm like, man, how does he do it? He's got it all together.
We all did.
He's got this great life, and he's always laughing, always having a good time.
Beautiful family.
And all the time that was going on, I was suffering. I was struggling with alcoholism, and just man, maybe one day I can be as happy as Chris. And and then we find out, things weren't so happy for him, and
it didn't. That action didn't save any of us, because I don't even care about some of my best golf outings. The only time I would really go golfing that I would never say no to was when Chris would invite me.
Yeah.
Of course, we're at the country club. It's nice, but he wouldn't
not always
even
where you're at. Sometimes it's the
which was what we got to, after like our third outing, and then we had a tradition every Columbus Day. Then we started bringing the wives to golf. Golf will never ever be the same, and it's not. I'll still go and play with. I only like playing in tournaments now because there's a bunch of people. But when me and Chris would take golf so seriously, it's like, dude, we're never gonna be pros. So just look at where we're at.
Enjoy the
take
moment.
Another shot. You have plenty of golf balls. That one went the wrong way. Try again, brother. And he was like, I never thought about golf that way. I was
Yeah.
like, look where we're at. We're out here in this beautiful
Sun is
back
out,
to that.
just me and you on,
Yes.
on the hole by ourselves in the cart, you know?
Yeah, and we were I'll never forget it. It had just rained and we walked that day, and it was just a beautiful moment that I got to share. I mean, just like these moments I'm sharing with you.
Yeah.
Back to this is my heaven, and my experiences are definitely a part of heaven.
Yeah.
But the effect it's had on all of us.
Yeah.
Still, suicide did not save him. We just completely lost him. And another friend I was having that conversation with, they lost because it's the rock of the family. When you lose the rock of the family, matriarch, whatever, that everybody, the support guy, the glue of everything,
Yeah.
When they leave is just never the same.
It's a big hole to fill. And, I've never, of all the people that I've known that have taken their lives, that hole has never been filled by anything else. I always think about those people, and I always will. Mm-hmm. Just because the impact of what they did to me, just as an example of someone I was striving to be, whether it be with Chris or, even with Jared, just with the race, being a memory of him, like the power that guy had to turn a shitty day or a shitty situation, and he just walks in the room and just says some of the dumbest stuff you could, but he gets a smile on everybody's face, or he'll, one of the, probably shouldn't say this, I'm going to, Jared, you'll be smiling down at me from heaven, buddy, but, he went to this thrift store and he came back and he bought, we were all poor college kids, so we go to the thrift store and find some vintage shirts or whatever. Well, Jared brought him, he didn't tell us that he bought them at the time, but we get back to the fraternity house and we get in our rooms and we're trying on our stuff. Well, Jared would come in our room. He bought a 3-pack of still packaged, unopened high-rise briefs. So Jared comes walking in here with nothing but a wife beater and like a high-rise brief. If you're not familiar with guys, they are not traditional underwear. Like they're not tighty-whities. They're like bikini underwear. And Jared had this big
low-rise.
He had this big old backside of him, so he'd pull those things on, and it was basically like a men's thong. And he'd just do goofy stuff like that, like. Yeah, if anybody else saw this, he'd probably be embarrassed, but it's around all of his friends and just,
That's a lot of life right there.
He's trying to keep us happy and in good spirits, We're on the other side, he's inside struggling, and we just don't know the extent of what it is. So, yeah, just with that, reach out to your people. I've got friends that have moved out of Jeff City and they, live in LA and Nashville and just all over the country, and I texted a buddy the other day. I said, hey, just a brotherly check-in. How you doing? Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope all is well. Hope to hear back. Well, I haven't heard back from that person yet, so I'm going to call him back again today,
The check-ins are so important. You never know.
You have no idea.
Never know.
And especially if you don't see him on a daily basis, if you were, if you guys moved to Kansas City or something, I'd probably have us do scheduled calls every week, just to check in.
And to just even this week, my sister had a phone call with somebody that worked very closely with Chris Wood. And it came up and she was like, that week he was working on my loan and he changed it over to another broker, another employee there in the building, strategically. So we all got to see him and talk to him and experience Chris that week. And that's the last, that was the last of it. We have that's the last memory. He wanted me to teach him how to whistle that Wednesday. In his office, the corner office at Central Bank. I was like, you want me to do it in here?
How do you whistle?
Because I can whistle pretty loud. And he's like, I was like, you want me to, we'll get kicked out of here, bro. He's like, just do it. Just live, goddammit. That was Chris. He brought the most life out of us. And that's usually those people, they bring the most life out of us.
Yeah. I did, there's a good podcast that Theo Vaughn did, I guess last week maybe. And it was with a retired Las Vegas police officer. Very interesting podcast. If you're interested, give it a listen. But just hearing, so we already think of Vegas as okay,
the shit.
What
Speaking of
kind
shit shows,
of stories do you guys have? But he
shows.
Majority of the calls were domestic, drinking and driving, or some kind of road rage, drinking and driving, aggravated assault type thing from driving, and then ODs. Those are the 3 calls they took the most. And he's like, yeah, granted, we've got some, elephant winds up in a casino. How did it get here in the lot? There's a couple of those.
Stories.
But most of the calls they get are those 3 things. But the other thing he said a lot is the amount of people that would be not in their right mind to the point where they would be egging the police to shoot them dead. Death by cop. Call that a 405. And he's like, yeah, some people, because Theo was like, well, why would they have you do, why would they do that? And he said, well, some people have religious beliefs where if they pull the trigger on themselves, they don't get to go to heaven, where somebody else shoots and kills them.
Oh my gosh.
So imagine, and this just goes back to just again, what I reiterate all the time, and first responders, cops, firefighters, I have no idea how you guys do that, where you get done with the shift, hang up your stuff, and you go home, and then Daddy's home, and you've got all this you just had to murder somebody, or you had to scrape somebody off the pavement on the highway from a traffic accident, or, so.
And then you go to the level of our veterans, that.
And again, scale it up to people that have seen not even just bad stuff that happens in our country around our rules and way of living, but different parts of the world that do not either like us or don't have the same traditions and culture that we do. So more barbarism, more stuff that is just traumatic that people aren't supposed to see on a regular basis. So shout out to all those veterans and first responders that have to deal with that on a daily basis. But
yeah, we're not here to say, obviously we're not here to say we're perfect, but
no,
we're here to hold you guys, give you a hug if that's what you need.
Yeah.
That's most of the time is just what you want, just to be held and listened to.
Well, and I'll say this too, I know at least in my case, it seemed like asking for help was a sign of weakness. Getting the courage to talk to somebody about getting help was the hardest thing that I ever did. But as soon as I did, and I started getting into the right kind of help that I needed, whether it be rehab, the treatment court the Cole County Treatment Court program, my local AA group, until I surrounded myself with more like-minded people that have issues similar to mine, you can relate so much better because, and I've said this before, whenever I got to rehab day 1, we're all sitting around a big circle, say your name, your drug of choice, and a little bit about yourself, and I was, boy, these people I'm going to blow all their hair back. And the first 2 people that talked were a couple of young ladies, 20, 21 years old, that had been abused by a stepfather, a father, an uncle, their whole life, So after hearing those 2 people speak, my hand went from way up in the air, me next.
This is how bad I am.
To I don't think my life's that bad. Because I couldn't understand what that would be like. I had a very good upbringing and all the things that I needed to succeed. And my life just took a path that, got down a hallway that I couldn't get out of, a dark hallway. So again, guys, asking for help is not a weak thing. It's not a life-threatening
any
way, shape, or form. It is one of the more bravest, hardest things I've ever seen people do. And I include myself in that because I was scared to death, What are people going to think of me? Yeah. What is work going to think of me? Are they going to take me back knowing that I'm an alcoholic? What about my family? I've lied to them so much they don't even believe me they don't believe a word coming out of my mouth. But I remember whenever I got sober and I sat down with my parents at that table before I went to rehab and, I said, look, my words don't hold any weight. So there's nothing I can say to make you guys feel better anymore. I've ruined that. So what I'm going to do from this point forward is I'm going to show you. By making it a day. And I'm going to go the next day, and then the next day. And then hopefully over time, you guys see that this is something that I'm taking very seriously and hopefully changing my life for the better. And that's what happened. And going through all that, I've never had a better relationship with my dad than I do now. Never had a better relationship with my mom than I do now. My brother, my nephews, everybody that's in my life, all my relationships are better on the other side.
Feels like heaven.
It does, and that's again, I've been in the deep, darkest holes and I see what's on the other side, and I hate saying that the grass is greener on the other side, but if you're struggling with mental health or substance abuse or a combination of the two, you got to ask for help and you got to get it professionally from people that are equipped to help you and have the tools to help you get sober, stay sober, work on your mental health, just practicing self-talk, positive self-talk. Try not to live in the past or your guilt of your past. That's who you were. That's not who you are today. So just, if you can just do that simple exercise every day, anytime you start talking negative of yourself, about who you used to be or what you've done in the past or something you're not proud of or something you're ashamed of, it's going to make you a better person. And just in how you look at life, moving forward. And the other thing too is just be grateful for what you got. Everybody can say, well, I could be doing better. Well, maybe, but look what you got. Like, take a time out and just see. You got a great family. You got healthy kids. You got a healthy wife. Your sister works here with you. Like, you got a great relationship with your mom.
My mom works down the street. We're all right here. We're in the same city.
So you got a lot to be happy for. You got your business. You got this building. You got your house. You're working on your garage, And that would be like taking all those things we just talked about, and you're focused on that garage that didn't go the way you originally planned. And you could just dwell on that all day long. Well, guess what? If that's all you talk about whenever I come in here to hang out with you, Gerardo, I'm not going to be wanting to hang out with you.
You want to hear about
much.
my garage anymore?
I don't want to hear, I want to hear when it's done. I want to know who you're hiring to do the next job.
I'll show you when it's done. So.
But you know what I mean? Like,
cool.
If you're always negative and just always bringing people down because of what you have wrong in your life, nobody wants to hear that because we've all got those stories. Now, I might not have the exact same story, but I have similar things that bum me out. But nobody wants to hear that, So I try and keep it as positive as possible.
But also have an outlet. I'm sure you have an outlet, somebody you get to vent to and all that. And
well, that's my 1 hour of running that I get to air the grievances, And whenever I'm done, whatever those grievances were, infantile. It's laughable at what I would get worked up over until I got that running, And again, that's the part that I don't love running. I love what running does when I'm done with the run, And it
thank
just
you for
clears
sharing
my head.
all that, man. It's a lot.
It is, but I mean, these are things that everybody deals with, whether it be a mental health thing or whether it be a substance abuse thing or a combination of the two, or maybe just feeling like you're not enough. Maybe you don't have any substance abuse issues, but maybe you're just constantly in a state of just depression or just negative self-energy or just negative self-talk. And it's very toxic to yourself and to your progression of becoming better.
Yeah.
You
get to breathe another day. I mean, it's a huge privilege.
Yeah.
Let's end on this quote.
Okay.
Again, back to Peter Crone, and it says, again, thank you for listening to our suicide talk. It's a very important thing to us.
Near and dear to us.
Don't take your life. Let go of the story that's currently suffocating the life you are. Don't take your life. Let go of the story that's currently suffocating the life you are, because that's all it is. It's a story.
Yeah.
And suffocating is
it's a scary feeling.
It's a word. It's a long word. But again, going deep into the podcast and how he breaks people down, it's a story you get to tell of the past, of one thing that changed the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
A mom telling a little girl, your singing is terrible at 4. But she would sing with her soul. Mm-hmm. At 4 years old, that's crushing.
Yeah.
That's like me telling my 4-year-old now, like, quit dancing to Drop It Like It's Hot by Snoop Dogg. She is in the moment and present, just loving that, like the beat and the song. And I love watching her do that. But again, you don't know where her mom's mind was at that day, or all that stuff is just, it was just a saying that ruined your life. And that shouldn't ruin anybody's life.
No. Well, and with kids too, like, I feel like kids get this rap a lot where, they're not paying attention, they're not listening. They are listening to everything you guys say. Whether you think they're listening,
watching
whether
even
they're
better.
not listening.
Yeah, they're listening, they're watching.
So again,
even better.
if you're just knocking on what they're doing, whether it be, well, you're a terrible baseball player at 5 years old, or you're a terrible outfielder at 5 years old. You'll never go pro. Why would you say that? Those are their dreams, and guess what? You have no idea where their life's going to go, whether that's a possibility or not. But there's one thing that I feel like, just in talking about this topic, G, that we need to bring up that we haven't yet. And, all of these things I talked about in terms of like last DWI, in jail, then to rehab, or then I got sat down at my parents' kitchen table where I got told either, you're going to get help or we're done. We're wiping our hands clean and we're done. And then getting to rehab and making it through that and feeling better on the other side of that. And then getting done with that and then dealing with the legal aspects and then fingers crossed, getting into the DWI Corp program, which I was lucky enough to get into. And then making my way through that, navigating through the challenges of not having a vehicle, not having transportation, not having a wife or a girlfriend that was living with me to drive. Just there's no vehicle, so you need to figure out how to be here by 10 o'clock or here by 3:30 in the afternoon. And then making my way through that and just making it to the other side of that fence. And then getting into my AA group and then just being an active member of that too. None of that would have happened if I hadn't done the one thing while I was sitting in jail. And that was I asked God for help. So I'm not saying you need to be a Christian, a Catholic, a this or a that, but you need to have a faith in something greater than yourself. And that's just an AA motto that we have. And it's just you got to have a higher power because everything we've done up to this point has failed. And most of that comes without the help of a higher power. So for me, I asked God for help. I said, God, I know I've asked you for every time I've gotten arrested with a DWI. Dear God, please get me out of this, and I promise it'll never happen again. Well, after the fourth time, I didn't believe my own words. So I wasn't going to go that route because I knew it was dishonest, disingenuous, and I wasn't being real. In this moment, you're in jail, okay? Not a lot of good things. You're not, this isn't me on a winning streak being in jail for my fourth time over the same thing and potentially going to prison for 5 years over it. So if I can find my aha moment in jail, you can find it too. And not in jail, hopefully. I prefer you didn't. I'd recommend you stay out of jail and ask God for help from the comfort of your bedroom or the comfort of your bathroom or whatever it is. But, I was sitting in jail and it was probably 18 hours in to my 24-hour hold, and I was sitting on the bunk, and there was a bunk above me. I was the only one in the room, but there was a two-person bunk, and I was sitting there trying to figure out what to do with my life next. And I said, well, not lots of good things to build off of here, but one thing I haven't done in a while is I'm going to have an honest conversation with God, and I'm going to ask Him for help. Now, I'm not going to dictate what those terms are. I'm not going to dictate anything. I'm asking for help, and hopefully He answers or He at least hears me today. And so all right, God, I need you to take the wheel, in my case, literally and figuratively, because I'm out of control. I can't do this anymore or things aren't going to end well for me. And I know that. I was at that point. That was my rock bottom. Mm-hmm. So I said, God, if you can help me with this, I'll do whatever you want. I don't need a sign because I'd always ask if you're, why me? Why don't I get a sign that you're listening? And so I did that. I said, God, I'm not going to ask you for anything. I'm just going to do the work, and I'm going to put my head down. I'm just going to do the next best thing, or I'm going to try to. And I sat back. A couple minutes go by, and I see there's something scratched on the bunk above me, and I just lean forward, and it says, everything happens for a reason. God is with you. So for me, I was like, okay. I didn't ask for a sign. You gave me one. That was just a stamp to the forehead. There's no way He can miss this sign right here, right now. And when that
you think about that moment daily.
I have to, because that was the turning point of my life.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to rehab. It wasn't getting into the DWI Corp program or graduating from the program or starting this race. It was none of those things. None of those would have been possible if I didn't have that moment with God. Because as soon as I saw that written on that bunk, something left my body. And I like to think that it's all the bad that I had sitting on my chest for all these years, all the lies that I was stacking on top of everything, all the shame and all the guilt of what my life had led to at that point. And if it wasn't for that moment, that was my aha moment, my light bulb moment. None of this, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing any of the things that I've done. So, and I, just to finish up this line here, when I did get to rehab, I was real hesitant there were two people I was hesitant to call that I hadn't called yet that I needed to just talk to. And that was my head wrestling coach, Mike Jeffries, and that was my grandma. And I remember I called my grandma, finally got the courage to do it, and we're in this common room because we didn't have cell phones when we were there. It was just a landline. So you're in the lobby basically, where like the kitchen's over here, the TV in the living room. So you're basically in general population with everybody. So I make this call and I said, hey Grandma, I just want to let you know I'm up here in Boonville. I'm getting some help, I'm trying to do better, and I've got a drinking problem and I'm trying to get that squared away. And I'll never forget this. She said, "Oh my gosh, Matthew, I'm so glad that God's answered my prayers." And she died 15 days later. And I got to sit with her on her deathbed because I had just gotten out of rehab 2 days earlier.
Ooh.
So if that doesn't give you goosebumps, or if that doesn't, if you still have a doubt that there is a higher power that's looking over us, take it from me. Use these experiences, because I can't explain any of these things in progression of why they have happened the way they have, but I don't need to know anymore. Because all I know is by doing what I'm doing currently and in that moment forward has made my life nothing but better. So if you haven't had a very selfless conversation with your higher power, I strongly recommend starting there, because you will be surprised either how many people are already praying for you, how many people are already concerned about you, wanting you need to do better, wanting you to figure this out. But again, that conversation with that higher power, that's where my life basically started, in my opinion.
So, suicide is never going to save you. People in faith will.
Amen.
Thank you for watching the Not So Perfect podcast.
Appreciate you guys.
Adios.